You're watching Teen Kids News. I'm Lila. This entire season, we're celebrating our 20th year. Let's begin with our top story. Wait, listen. Do you hear that? It's a cry for help. And as Emily tells us, it's a cry for help that's coming from the oceans of our world.
You could call it a sort of SOS, as in save our seas. Yes, the world's oceans are gigantic. They cover more than 70% of the planet's surface. In fact, of all the water in our world, an astounding 97% is found in the 5 oceans: Arctic, Atlantic, Indian, Pacific, and Southern. But of course, they're all connected. So there really is just one global ocean. And that means damaging one part of any of the 5 oceans can put all the other bodies of water at risk. So you'd think people would be sure to take care of this vital and precious resource. After all, half of our planet's oxygen comes from the phytoplankton that call the ocean home. Not to mention that fish and other marine life are a major source of food. So what can we do to respond to the ocean's SOS? We're about to find out. Joining us is Scott Boha. He's from OceanWise, a nonprofit organization based in Vancouver, Canada. Why was OceanWise started?
OceanWise has been an ocean champion for over 50 years, and our mission is to empower communities and individuals, especially youth, to take action to protect and restore our world's oceans.
And to get that message out, you sponsor an annual competition called the Innovator Lab.
So the OceanWise Innovator Lab is a project-based competition for youth around the world, age 13 to 30. So you get to work with your friends, you get to work with your teachers, other mentors that you might know to develop solutions that can help protect and restore the world's ocean.
And Scott, joining you are 2 members of a team that participated in Innovator Lab. Anna, what was your team's project?
Yeah, our project titled Oceans for Youth was a collection of lesson plans made specifically for elementary school teachers to kind of bring climate education and information about ocean conservation to classrooms.
And Annie, why did you decide to enter the competition?
I decided to enter the competition just because it was such a great opportunity to work towards ocean conservation, and I had a great time with my friends who were doing it as well.
And what did each of you do on the project?
Yeah, so we both kind of worked on developing workshops specifically for the educators. So I made a workshop on orca health and ecology.
And I made a presentation on ocean conservation, especially in Arctic regions. And I think we both had a great time doing that.
What did you learn from the experience?
I definitely learned how important educators and teachers are in the world of climate conservation and ocean conservation. And I learned a bit more about climate anxiety, which is a pretty big problem among youth our age.
What exactly do you mean by climate anxiety?
Yeah, so climate anxiety is a huge problem among youth our age. It can kind of come from always absorbing news articles about how terrible the effects of climate change are right now. And it can kind of feel very isolating and saddening at times because it can make you feel unsure about the state of our future.
For viewers who want to enter the next competition, what are you looking for?
So we're looking for a clear description of the idea and really to have identified an issue around ocean conservation and ocean health, but then also communicating clearly what the impact of your innovation would be. How would you share that story? How would you measure some of the results? And to have a plan developed around the implementation of your innovation.
Why should teens enter the Innovation Lab?
I think teens possess such a unique creativity and perspective on environmental issues. And when you bring teens into work like this, they really kind of challenge preconceived notions about what it means to be an environmentalist and what it means to care about the climate. And they kind of get to see their ideas come to life in a really beautiful way and see how it impacts the community around them.
Good point. Thank you all for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Even though OceanWise is headquartered in Canada, as Scott said, the competition is open to teens everywhere. Top prizes range from $400 to about $2,500. Everyone who participates gets a digital certificate in recognition, as well as a badge you can add to your LinkedIn profiles. It's also great for a college or job resume. To find out how you can help Turn the tide against things like ocean pollution, overfishing, and climate change. Check out ocean.org. For Teen Kids News, I'm Emily.
We've got lots more coming up on Teen Kids News, so keep watching. We'll be right back. Unless you've been hiding under a rock for the past year, you've probably been hearing a lot of talk about politics. And the talk hasn't just been about who to vote for. From political scientists to journalists, much attention is being focused on how divided and bitter American politics has become. Why is this happening? And more importantly, what can be done to put a bit of politeness back into politics? Here's Katarina with a report.
Let's say you were running for class president. Would it be okay if you called your opponent bad names?
I think calling them bad names, I don't think it really accomplishes anything except just telling other people that you're just going to stoop really low to make other people look bad. But other than that, it's not going to help your chances of winning.
By treating them poorly, it reflects worse on you because it looks like you will stoop to a level so low that you will resort to childish, insult.
I don't think it would be okay for me to call my opponent bad names, because if I were to be elected, I would like to be elected for me, not because I'm degrading someone else.
Most of us agree. We've been taught that name calling is bad behavior and that it shouldn't be tolerated. Yet a lot of adults seem to have forgotten that. Politicians call each other ugly names. Political ads say hurtful things about their opponents. Supporters of one candidate have even physically attacked supporters of a rival candidate. Clearly, this is a very upsetting side of our democratic process. What's causing this turn to the dark side? Some say the fault lies with our two-party system. About 100 years ago, the journalist H.L. Mencken wrote, "Under democracy, one party always devotes its chief energies to trying to prove that the other party is unfit to rule." Probably not since the Civil and Vietnam Wars have Americans been so, guess the best word is polarized. In reference to politics, being polarized means to move to opposite extremes. And most experts agree that holding extreme views is not healthy for our democracy. When we return, we'll talk with someone who explains the history of polarization and what we can do about it. Teen Kids News will be right back. One of the biggest problems in politics today is polarization. Joining us is Dustin Lawson. He worked at the White House as a speechwriter, and he's the author of the book, The Logos Party. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
How does political polarization hurt the country?
One of my favorite quotes was by President Gerald Ford, who was president in the 70s, and he said that truth is the glue that holds government together and compromise is the oil that makes government go. And when we get so polarized and so tribal and we get stuck on our teams and we become rivals with each other and see each other who have differences of opinion as enemies, truth and compromise are what help a democracy remain healthy. And those two things get sacrificed when we become so polarized and we care only about our group and our team winning.
Well, speaking of teams, we have a two-party system, and you wrote your book because you felt that the two-party system isn't working. Why isn't it working?
Because it's become so polarized and so us versus them, they're not working together, and a lot of the country is not liking that, and so they're actually losing members of both parties. If the country was 100 people that represented the country as a whole, then 30 of them would be Democrats, 25 Republicans, and the rest would be independents, people who don't belong to a political party. So the biggest group of our country isn't even represented by these two parties. So more and more, but these two parties, they have the power, they make the decisions, but they don't really represent the entirety of the country very well. Maybe never did completely, but really it's getting even worse.
But isn't the two-party system an essential part of our nation's history?
I wouldn't say essential. It's definitely a major part of our nation's history since it's been there almost from the beginning. Not from the beginning, but almost from the beginning. So it's not in the Constitution that we have to have parties. And in fact, I think many of the founding fathers would have preferred that we didn't have political parties because they saw the potential negative consequences of what would happen, like what is currently happening, where we just become so us versus them, enemy versus seeing each other as enemies instead of actually working together.
Today we expect the vice president to be from the same party as the president, but it wasn't always that way, was it?
No, definitely not in the beginning. In the beginning, the person who got second place in the presidential race was the vice president. And that was fine for the first 2 terms because no one was going to beat George Washington and no one really ran against George Washington. So the second place person was John Adams. But then during President Washington's administration, the 2 parties were created, one by Thomas Jefferson, one by John Adams, and they became bitter rivals. And so when they ran against each other for the presidency, to be the second president, John Adams won, Thomas Jefferson was second, but since they were such bitter rivals, it didn't work very well. And so the country began to realize maybe the second place person being the vice president isn't such a great idea. And so they created an amendment to the Constitution. Now the president could choose their own vice president. So it almost always was from their own political party. The only time it wasn't was in 1864 when Abraham Lincoln, to try and help bring unity to the country during the Civil War, he, a Republican, chose Andrew Johnson, a Democrat, to be his vice president.
Well, since it's unlikely we'll be ditching the 2-party system, is there a way to have political views without hostility towards those who don't share our views?
Very much so. In my book, I describe the worst type of politics, which is dogma versus dogma, where everyone's closed-minded and we see each other with differences of opinion as enemies. But next to that, I describe what I think is the healthiest type of politics, which is reason with reason, where everybody, to be a person of reason, you care more about truth than your opinion. So that means in case you're wrong, you're willing to admit you could be wrong, you actually want your views to be challenged, and you actually have a mind that's open to being changed. And if we embrace that type of politics more and just our one-on-one dialogue, then it would be a much better situation. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "Differences of opinion lead to inquiry, and inquiry to truth." So intellectual diversity is a good thing. It's one of the best things about our country.
Most of us aren't yet old enough to vote, so what can we do to improve the situation?
Yeah. There's many organizations, like this one organization that I've been working with, and what they do is create debates and other kind of events where they bring Democrats, Republicans, and independents together to have a cordial conversation about particular issues. And teenagers can do this as well in their high school. You might have an organization for Democrats, an organization for high school Republicans, and I recommend having events where you come together and discuss your differences of opinion in a cordial way.
That sounds reasonable. Thanks for speaking with us, Dustin.
Thank you for having me again.
Whatever your political preference, we here at Teen Kids News want to remind you of a very important privilege, the right to vote. Whether you're already 18 or will be one day, here's a great quote to keep in mind. If we don't vote, we are ignoring history and giving away the future. So, if you want to have a say in your future, make voting a habit. For Teen Kids News, I'm Katarina.
When we return, we'll catch up with another member of our news team who used to do what I'm doing now. The celebration of our 20th anniversary continues when Teen Kids News returns. Don't go away. For weeks now, we've been telling you that this is a very important season for Teen Kids News. We've now been on the air for 20 years. Over that time, 9 teens have sat in this anchor chair. Let's meet one of them.
We all know smoking is terrible for us, so why do teens try it? A new study shows Hollywood is partly to blame.
Being on Teen Kids News was extremely fun. I remember us having a lot of fun, both waiting to go on and practicing behind the scenes, and then when we were on set, there's a lot of time that you spend reading the copy, but in between you're also just making jokes and like looking forward to the next segment. I've had a blast.
Jack, Why? Because it's driving you crazy because they're driving at the desk? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I imagine the director's biggest challenge was getting us to be quiet. I mean, particularly me. When I got tapped to be on Teen Kids News, I think I was doing commercials and did some theater productions. Most notably, I played young Simba in The Lion King. But that was very different than delivering the news in the way we were doing on Teen Kids News. I think there are two hard parts of being an anchor. The first one is trying to make sure that all of your lines are delivered correctly with the proper cadence and speed so they can be understood.
The latest efforts to calm a threat to world peace.
That sounds fine, but it should be the latest on efforts, okay?
Okay.
So do the whole thing as one read. Go ahead.
All together?
Yeah.
Okay. Next on Teen Kids News.
And the second is understanding what kind of tone you're supposed to have at particular parts of the show. So whether or not you're supposed to bring people from a sad story to the next segment, which is supposed to be upbeat, or vice versa, and figuring out how to change your emotions in a relatively short amount of time to cover that. So I currently work as an architect. I'm an architectural designer, and we do a lot of presenting, both within our company and most importantly to clients. And I think my time at Teen Kids News helped me immensely in that regard, where it's pretty easy for me to put together a presentation and then deliver it with confidence because I spent so much time delivering the news on Teen Kids News. I think that it's important for teens and kids to have a show that is geared towards them.
Get out of the way, nerd.
There were segments about bullying, there were segments about eating right, exercise, and that was kind of the philosophy of the show, news you can use, where when you watch the show, it wasn't just current events. We were delivering news that was applicable to your everyday life. Winning an Emmy was incredible.
The Emmy goes to Teen Kids News, U.S. Naval Academy, WNYW Fox 5.
It's recognition that folks are watching the show, that they understand what you're doing, and that you have made some kind of impact. And I mean, till today, it's something that I talk about. It's something that I have displayed prominently in my home. It's something that I'm quite proud of.
It's time for another important message brought to you by the National Road Safety Foundation.
Dad, you should really pay attention to the road.
I've been driving for 20 years. I think I know what I'm doing.
Come on, Dad, it can't be that important.
I'm almost fit.
Dad, watch out!
It's time for another short break, but we'll be right back with more Teen Kids News. So stay with us.
Have you ever been driving down the road when you suddenly see a huge building painted a vibrant blue? It's instantly recognizable as an IKEA store. Most people know that IKEA is a company based in Sweden. And most probably assume that IKEA is a Swedish word. Actually, it's not. It's a made-up word. The I and K are the first letters of the name of the man who founded the company, Ingvar Kamprad. The E stands for the name of the farm he grew up on, Elmturyd. And the A is for his hometown, Agunnaryd. Thank goodness IKEA is far easier to pronounce. With What's in a Name, I'm Veronique.
If you collect coins, you're called a numismatist. And if you're a pretty smart numismatist, you'll probably know why this coin is worth $10 million. At the urging of Alexander Hamilton, the U.S. established its first national mint in 1792. The building was located in Philadelphia, which was serving as the nation's capital at the time. Not only was it the tallest building in Philadelphia, but the U.S. Mint was the first federal agency to hire women. Wanting to produce dollar coins, the mint decided to copy the size and weight of the Spanish silver dollar. This is the coin from which the term pieces of 8 is derived. Because British coins tended to be scarce, the Spanish dollar was very popular with early Americans. Engraver Robert Scott designed the coin known as the flowing hair dollar. Minting began in 1794, but the design was only used for 2 years. It's believed that fewer than 130 of the 1794 dollars still exist. Because it's so rare and the fact that it was the first official American dollar, the flowing hair dollar is called the U.S.'s most valuable coin. Guess that makes sense. For Teen Kids News, I'm Lila.
Well, that wraps up our show for this week. But we'll be back with more Teen Kids News next week. See you then!